Most people go their whole lives without having a single near-death experience because they don't know how to put themselves in stupid situations. When they see a cliff, they think,
probably shouldn't try hanging off that.
But because of my lack of brain cells, I've collected near-death experiences like Pokemon cards throughout my life, including the one I just put at the very beginning of this video. But before I tell you that story, we gotta talk about the Pennywise incident. So the first time I almost got sent to the gulag all happened because of the movie It. Now, if you've never watched this movie, the main character, Pennywise the Clown, lives in the sewers while eating children. But in the movie, he's always popping through these storm drains, spying on the kids. So after I saw this, instead of having a normal human reaction like, wow, I should surely stay away from those storm drains, my brain decided, you know what? I kind of want to see what it's like to go in a storm drain myself. And lucky for me, there happened to be one right outside my house. So one day, when I didn't see anyone outside walking around in my neighborhood, I decided this was the moment. I walked up to the storm drain that I've been wanting to go in for weeks, and I peeked inside it. It was big enough for me to climb into, but I couldn't see what was at the bottom of it with just my weak phone flashlight. But I figured it couldn't be that far of a drop if I went in. So when the moment was right and the coast was clear, I climbed down into the drain. My body was now fully inside and I was hanging onto it with my hands. I could now see that the bottom was about a 2-foot drop. So I let go of my grip and dropped down to the bottom. It was working perfectly. It felt so cool to be at the bottom of the storm drain. But you may be wondering, Tyler, when is the part where you actually almost die? Well, the second my feet hit the bottom, I looked up and realized I had a problem. There was no ladder to get back up. No steps, no rope, no convenient climbing apparatus of any kind. Just smooth concrete walls and daylight mocking me from way up above. Now you may be thinking, Tyler, of course it wouldn't have any way to get back up. It's a storm drain. It's not meant for people to go into. Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't think about that. And once I found out there was no way back up, I figured out I was stuck. The panic started setting in slowly. First, I was just like, okay, this is fine. I can figure this out because I've seen maintenance workers being here before. So obviously there's gotta be some way out, right? But then it was like, okay, I don't see any way to get out. And after a couple more minutes, now I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna die in here. And at this point, you may be saying to yourself,
okay, yeah, the situation kind of sucks, but you're not gonna actually die in there. Stop being dramatic. Like, eventually, someone will get you out.
well, give me 1 minute and I'll explain to you why that was not the case. Because when I got stuck, I tried jumping first to get out. Just jump really high and grab the edge. The only problem was the edge was like 8 feet above me and I could maybe jump 4 inches on a good day. Then I tried the Spider-Man approach, you know, where you press your feet and hands against the walls and then shimmy up. I'd seen it done in movies. It looked totally doable. So I pressed my feet against one wall and my hands against the other and tried to climb. That lasted approximately 3 seconds before I found out I'm out of shape. So I did the only thing I could do. I yelled for my mom. And when I say I yelled, I mean I yelled. I was screaming, Mom! Mom, help me! Just hoping my voice would somehow reach her inside the house. Of course, she didn't hear me. She was probably inside the house making dinner, using that disgusting crock pot, which I still despise, but that's another story. Anyways, I was down there for probably 5 minutes, just screaming into the void, my voice echoing off the concrete walls, kind of scared, but at this point, I still wasn't worried. But then, I felt something fall onto my head. I touched my head to see what it was, and it felt wet. I didn't think much of it until I felt another drop on top of my head, and then another, until after a couple seconds, I realized it was starting to rain outside, and I could now see drops falling through the opening above me. And that's when the panic really hit. If it rains really hard and this drain fills all the way up, I'm gonna drown. So I knew I was probably cooked. Luckily, some people were going for a walk in the rain. Just a nice couple taking an afternoon stroll. And they heard this kid screaming bloody murder from underground. So they came over to the storm drain, looked down, and saw me standing there looking like a wet rat. And I was just like, hey guys, can you get my mom? She lives at that house right there. They were probably so confused, but bless their hearts, they didn't ask any questions. They were just like,
okay, we'll go over to your house.
So they knock on the door, explain the situation, and my mom comes sprinting out of the house when these strangers told her what happened. I like to imagine that there was a brief moment where she thought they were joking, but then she came over, looked down, made eye contact with me, and I watched her face go through about 17 different emotions in 3 seconds. First, there was confusion, then realization, and then disappointment, and finally, anger. She asked me how I got down there, and I just said, can you ask questions later when I'm not getting drenched by sewer water that's filling up by the second? She agreed, but she didn't know how to get me out. We couldn't fit a ladder through there. She wasn't strong enough to just throw me a rope and pull me up, so she ended up doing the only thing she could think of, calling the fire department. So now there's fire trucks showing up to my house. Multiple fire trucks, actually. Neighbors started coming out to see what was happening. The firefighters arrived, and to their credit, they were very professional. They didn't laugh at me, at least not to my face. I wouldn't have blamed them if they laughed at me behind the scenes, but they addressed the situation and had to build a makeshift ladder just to get me out. They pulled me out of that drain covered in a mix of of dirt and sewer water, which probably meant I was covered in all the neighbors' dookie. So just remember, if you're scared of Pennywise, that man literally lives in people's dookie. That's just embarrassing, but not as embarrassing as this next story. Now, this one isn't technically about me almost dying, but it's about another person almost dying and it being my fault. This also happened when I was 7 years old. And I think this story is worse because if my stupidity hurts me, oh well, but my stupidity hurting other people is where I draw the line. So let me explain what happened. My grandpa suffered a stroke, which was obviously really serious and scary for the whole family. He was in the hospital for over a month, just recovering, doing physical therapy, trying to get back to normal. And we'd go visit him pretty regularly because that's what you do when family's in hospital. He could barely speak and literally had no control over the whole left side of his body. But here's the thing, sitting in a hospital room for hours with nothing to do is absolute torture when you're 7 years old. Like there's only one TV and it's on The Price is Right 24 hours a day because that's all your grandpa wants to watch. There's no toys. There's nothing to do except sit there and watch old people sleep. Or you can watch the nurses you want to marry check Gramps' vitals every 20 minutes. My grandpa shared a room with another patient who was in a coma. Unfortunately, that man didn't have family visit him as often as our family would. So sometimes we would use stuff from his side of the room. One day, while we were visiting, I reached peak boredom. I'd counted all the ceiling tiles. I read all the posters on the walls about washing your hands. I'd memorized the pattern on the floor. I needed some form of entertainment badly. But that's when I noticed that on the other patient's side, the guy in a coma, there was a chair, a pretty comfortable looking chair, and nobody was sitting in it. The guy was unconscious, so he certainly wasn't going to use it, and all the chairs on my grandpa's side were taken. But I was tired of standing. So while my family wasn't paying attention, I snuck over to that side and sat down in this chair like I just discovered a secret lounge. I was going to sit there and play games on my iPad like I had been doing for the past 2 weeks. But there was only one problem. My iPad was about to die. The battery was in the red zone, so I needed to charge it immediately because I was trying to play some Fruit Ninja. This was a life or death situation. Well, probably not as life or death as some of the patients in that hospital, but you know what I mean. I looked around for somewhere to plug in my charger and I found a wall outlet right next to the guy in a coma's bed. Problem solved. The only issue was there was already something plugged into it. There was this cable taking up the outlet. And in my mind, I thought, that's annoying, but I need this outlet more than whatever this cable is for. What could it even be plugged in for? Is the guy gonna play Fruit Ninja too? I highly doubt it. A normal person would think, maybe I shouldn't unplug random cables inside a hospital room. But this was Tyler we're talking about. So I just unplugged it, yanked it right out the wall like I was unplugging a phone charger. No big deal, right? Wrong. The second I unplugged that cable, a bell started ringing. And I don't mean like a gentle ding, ding type of bell. No, I mean alarms going off like I just triggered a nuclear launch sequence. The bell was so loud, my ears were ringing, and the nurses came sprinting into the room from every direction like Olympic athletes, radioing for backup, moving with urgency. A nurse gets to our room and she looks me directly in the eyes and says,
"Did you unplug that cable?"
I looked at the cable in my hand, then at the guy that was in a coma, and then I looked back at the cable and I went, no. She knew I was lying, so she says,
"The cable you're holding is that man's life support."
What does the life support do? So I start freaking out. And when I say freaking out, I mean having a full-on panic attack. Hyperventilating, tears immediately streaming down my face because I was just thinking, I just accidentally killed this man. I was crying so hard I could not even talk. My life was over. I was gonna be known as the kid who killed someone over Fruit Ninja. In my head, this guy was in a coma, which meant he needed life support to live. And I just unplugged him like I was unplugging a toaster. I thought it was over. The nurses were checking on the patient, looking at all the monitors, and I'm just sitting there crying, genuinely thinking I just became a murderer. But as I'm screaming out, I don't want to go to prison! I see that the nurses aren't freaking out nearly as much as I am, which was weird considering the fact I thought I just sent someone to the afterlife. But then they explained something. There are automatic battery backups for life support machines. So when the main power gets unplugged, the battery kicks in immediately, which means nothing actually happened to the patient. His life support was running this whole time. The alarms were just there to alert the staff to come check it. I was still crying though, because, well, now my mom was gonna give me the death stare. The nurses were surprisingly chill once they realized it was just a stupid kid. They plugged the thing back in, explained why you should never unplug things in hospitals, and went back to work. So if any of those nurses are watching this video, hit me up. Okay, I'm sorry, I'll stop. So imagine this, you're driving home, same route you always take, nothing weird. Then out of nowhere, someone blows a stop sign and hits you. Next thing you know, you're on the side of the road, adrenaline still pumping, trying to process what just happened. Your car's wrecked, your head's racing, and everything feels chaotic. Your phone starts blowing up with calls and messages about the accident. What really matters is having someone on your side who actually knows how this works. Someone whose entire job is to protect you and fight for you. That's why if you're ever injured because of someone else's negligence, you can check out Morgan & Morgan. There's a reason why you wouldn't drive distracted, just like there's a reason why Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm. They've been fighting for the people for over 35 years. With more than 1,000 lawyers, 100 offices nationwide, and they've recovered over $30 billion dollars for their clients. Hiring Morgan & Morgan is basically like having an entire legal team step in and handle everything for you. The paperwork, the back and forth, so you don't have to figure it out all on your own. And the best part is, their fee is free unless they win. Because not all law firms are the same, and hiring the wrong one may mean you're beat before you even start. You can check out Morgan & Morgan at forthepeople.com/Tyler Vitelli. Now, at 7 years old, I was pretty dumb. Okay, you would think as I got older, I would get smarter, but no. Because when I was 12 years old, my family took me to the zoo one day. And I know what you're thinking. Oh no, you were at the zoo. The title of the video is called Times I Almost Died. You must have jumped into that lion enclosure and got thrown around like a rag doll, huh? Well, almost, but not quite. Let me explain. So we're walking around the zoo, looking at all the animals, taking pictures, and after seeing the lions, tigers, and minions, eventually we got to the gorilla exhibit. I'd been excited about the gorillas specifically because I was always fascinated by them. When you look at a gorilla, their body is pretty close to the human body, so to see them with human-like fingers and eyes was just really cool to me. Now in this exhibit, there was a big glass wall separating us from the gorillas, probably like 2 inches thick. And you would think to yourself, surely the zoo designed this place so that that glass is indestructible. Like there's no way the gorilla could break through it. Well, I'm standing there at the glass and I see this massive silverback gorilla just chilling in the enclosure. At first, he was just sitting, probably thinking about gorilla stuff like bananas. But then he started walking toward the glass. Just a slow, casual walk. But then he got closer and closer. And now he's standing right in front of me, maybe 3 feet away. And he's just staring at me. Not in a friendly way either. He's making direct eye contact, looking straight into my soul. And it's just me and this tiny piece of glass separating us. But here's where I messed up, because I don't know what it was that possessed me. Maybe it was the same part that got me stuck in a storm drain. But I started beating my chest, just like the gorilla would do. I'm standing there going, "Ah!" while looking the gorilla straight in the eyes, probably looking absolutely ridiculous. And my parents were a few feet away looking at some informational sign, completely unaware their son was about to start a fight with an endangered species. And when I did this, I saw something change in that gorilla's eyes. Like a switch flipped. He went from just chilling there to, I'm about to end this kid. The gorilla's posture changed. His expression changed. He did not think what I was doing was funny. So he starts beating his chest now, and then immediately he charges at the glass. And when I say charged, I mean full on sprint. All 4 limbs on the ground, moving faster than something that big should be able to move. This 400-pound ball of pure muscle was just running directly at me with murder in his eyes. And then he hit the glass. We all flinched, but when we looked back at the glass, we realized there was now a crack. And it wasn't a small one. But then the gorilla is beating his chest, going crazy, looking like he's ready to hit it again. So all of us watching the gorilla run away from that glass. Because it looked like if he took one more hit against that thing, it would shatter, and 2 seconds later, we would all turn into his dinner. But then he did run into it again, and miraculously, the glass was still intact. A couple zoo workers came over and got the gorilla to calm down, and he stopped hitting the glass. But I still think to myself to this day, how close was that gorilla to actually breaking through that glass? But I don't have to think about what potentially could have happened for this next story I'm about to tell you, because what actually happened was painful enough. Let's call it the motorcycle incident. So my dad used to be really into riding motorcycles in the desert when I was younger. Every weekend, he'd load up his bike and just ride for hours. And he wanted me to get into it because, you know, father-son bonding time. The only problem was he always made me use the little kid bike. These things only go like 10 miles per hour. Like they're basically designed for toddlers. And I hated it. Every time we went riding, I'd watch my dad go on his big bike, just flying on that thing, doing cool turns, looking awesome, while I'm just puttering along on my baby bike. I felt so embarrassed. For probably a year, I begged my dad to let me try a bigger bike. Every single ride, I'd ask. But every time, he'd say, "No, you're not ready yet." He was right. Because finally, when I got to about 8 years old, he decided I was ready. He bought me a new bike, a real bike. This thing had power. I was so excited I could barely sleep the night before testing it out. But what I didn't realize was just how powerful this bike actually was. The little kid bike was like a tricycle. This new bike was like going from a tricycle straight to a Ferrari. So we get to the desert, unload the bikes, and my dad gives me the safety speech.
"Remember, this is more powerful. Start slow."
Got it. Let me go.
I got on the bike, pulled the throttle all the way back. The bike took off like a rocket. It went from 0 to 30 miles per hour in maybe 2 seconds, which doesn't sound that fast, but when you're 8 and you've never gone faster than 5 miles per hour, 30 feels like you're breaking the sound barrier. I couldn't control it at all. My hands were locked on the handlebars in pure panic. The bike just kept going, and I was swerving everywhere like I was in a video game with broken controls. My dad was trying to yell something behind me, but I couldn't even hear him over the engine and the blood rushing through my ears. But here's where it gets really bad, because I was heading straight for a group of people having a campfire next to their motorhome. I was on a collision course with these innocent people just trying to enjoy their camping trip. There was probably 4 or 5 people sitting in camping chairs around this fire, maybe roasting some marshmallows. They looked so peaceful. But eventually, they realized, this kid isn't gonna turn. I saw their faces change from having a nice, relaxing evening to, oh my gosh, this kid is gonna run us over. Now, I didn't want that to happen, so I did the only thing my panic brain could think of. I turned the handlebars as hard as I could to the left. The bike turned so sharply that I couldn't stay on it. I fell off, and because I turned right next to where they were sitting, I slid directly into their campfire. Not near it, into it. My head was literally in the fire like I was the next marshmallow about to become a s'more. And when my momentum stopped, I just laid there for a second, not moving, not because I was hurt, but because I was catching my breath. I didn't even realize my head was in a fire, but the people saw what happened and pulled me out as quickly as possible. My parents came running over, and I could hear my mom screaming, like blood-curdling screams. She was probably thinking her son just burned his face off. When my mom took my helmet off, I was completely fine. Not a single burn. The helmet protected me from the fire. I don't know if motorcycle helmets are designed to be fireproof or if I just got incredibly lucky, but I was completely unharmed. I didn't even know I fell into the fire until they told me. I felt the fall, I felt myself sliding, I felt people grabbing me, but I didn't feel any heat or flames. I basically got out of that situation with just a few scratches. I gave the bike back to my dad immediately and said,
Okay, can I just have the little kid one again?
you know, I'm starting to notice that there were a lot of moments in my life where I did something dangerous involving fire when I was younger. And that remains true for this next story about the time where my mom made chili one night. But this wasn't just any chili. No, this was really good chili. The kind that's been marinating all day, got all the spices perfectly balanced. The kind that makes the whole house smell amazing. Okay, I should stop describing the food. I'm just getting hungry. I know I've said before that my mama can't cook, but when it comes to chili, she locks in. There was only one problem. I wasn't home the night she was making it. I was at a friend's house. So when the next day came, you know the one thing I wanted to have was some of that leftover chili. So I went to the kitchen and she had one bowl of it left over saved specifically for me, and it was wrapped in tinfoil. But it was cold from sitting in the fridge. And since I'm not a psychopath, I decided to heat it up in the microwave. How could I mess this up? Well, never underestimate my ability to ruin something. Because remember, I said the chili had tinfoil on it. I had absolutely no idea that tinfoil and microwaves were mortal enemies. Nobody told me they have beef with each other. Get it? Beef? Chili? So I took this bowl of chili out of the fridge with its tinfoil on and put it in the microwave. I then set the timer to 1 minute. I pressed start and I left the kitchen to go to the bathroom while it was heating up. So I'm in the bathroom when I start to hear sounds coming from the kitchen. At first, it's just a little popping. The popping sound gets louder and faster. And now it sounded like someone was setting off fireworks in my kitchen. And you know the popping sound is loud if I can hear it over the sound of my stream. I ran back to the kitchen as fast as I could. Inside the microwave, there was a full-on fire. Not a little flame, a legit fire with sparks flying everywhere like a Tesla coil. The tin foil was glowing. There were blue and white electrical arcs jumping around. And for a second, I stood there frozen, just watching this light show. And then I realized I'm the only one in this house. I should probably stop this before it burns the whole place down. So I ran over and opened the microwave door, which stopped the sparks, but the damage was already done. The inside of that microwave looked like it had just been through a war. The microwave was dead. Not like a, it just needs to cool down type of dead. No, like a never gonna work again dead. I tried pressing buttons. No one else was home. So I decided the best course of action was to just not tell anyone what I did. So I cleaned up the bowl of destroyed chili, threw away the evidence, and left the microwave looking normal from the outside. You couldn't tell it was broken anymore unless you tried to use it. But a couple days later, my brother did try to use it. He put his food in, pressed some buttons, and nothing happened. The display didn't light up, and he told my mom. So she came over to look, and they were both confused. And this is where I had to lock in, because I walked over, looked at it with them, and then said,
Huh, that's weird. Josh, you just broke the microwave.
I blamed it on my brother. They never found out it was me. To this day, they probably still think that microwave randomly died. Now, I need everyone to pay very close attention for this next story, which is the chainsaw incident. And I can easily say this is the closest I've ever personally come to actually dying. So my dad was outside one Saturday using a chainsaw to cut something up in the backyard. My dad's out there with his murder machine, wearing safety goggles, doing everything right. And that's when I decided, you know what? It would be hilarious to sneak up behind him and give him dead legs. If you don't know what dead legs is, it's this thing where you hit the back of someone's knees so their legs buckle. So I walked up behind him real quiet. He had no idea I was there. I hit the back of his legs. His knees buckled and he jolted forward, losing his balance. And this made him swing the chainsaw because he just lost control of it. But he swung it right in the direction of my face. Everything went into slow motion. I watched the chainsaw blade swing up. I watched the teeth on it spinning towards me. And I kid you not, that chainsaw came within 1 or 2 inches of my head. That's the the difference between me telling you this story and me being a news headline. I could literally feel the wind from the blades on my eyebrows. Luckily, my dad regained his balance, pulled the chainsaw away, and immediately turned it off. He didn't yell at me. He just looked at me with this expression I'd never seen before. It was the look of a man who realized his son almost just died. And then he said, in the most calm but serious voice ever,
Go inside.
that was the moment I realized I should stop doing stupid things. I never actually did stop, but hey, at least I realized I should.